Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to call to order the regular City Commission meeting of May 3rd, 2022 at 7 p.m. Please call to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Drosky.
Here.
Commissioner Cornez.
Here.
Commissioner Preston.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hudak.
Here.
Mayor Nance.
Here. Please stand for a moment of silence and our Pledge of Allegiance. If I could ask everyone to please keep in their memory Eddie Chalker, who was a longtime City of Deerfield Beach resident and the son of our former mayor, Mayor Chalker, who passed away back in March. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you please have approval of the City Commission meeting minutes from April 5th, 2022, and April 19th, 2022.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Parnas, seconded by Vice Mayor Hudak. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Acknowledgement of our city board meeting minutes from December 14th, 2021 for the Community Redevelopment Agency. The Hillsborough Inlet District meeting minutes from March 21st, 2022. Our co-compliance meeting minutes from October 5th, October 18th of 2021, January 11th, 26th, February 8th, and the 23rd, and March 8th of 2022. And the African American Heritage Board meeting minutes, February 10th, 2022, March 10th, 2022, and April 7th.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion from City Attorney Jim Rwanda. Someone? No, sir. We have a motion from Commissioner Parnas, seconded by Commissioner Preston. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have approval of our agenda tonight for May 3rd, 2022. I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for on the item of agenda 6, by request of the family, be pulled to be added to the next agenda. This is item number 6, a proclamation honoring Mr. Barney Chalker.
Motion to approve with the full item.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor, second by Commissioner Parnas. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, Madam Clerk.
For members of the public wishing to provide comments during tonight's meeting, 3 minutes will be provided. However, 1 additional minute can be granted by Mayor Nance. Anyone connected online via Zoom video must hover the mouse at the bottom of the screen and click the participants tab. On the right, click raise hand. You will be recognized by your profile name and your audio will be unmuted. Those participating via mobile or landline, dial *9 to raise your hand. You'll be recognized by the last 3 digits of your number. You may dial *6 if necessary to unmute. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Tonight, our first item that we have the honor of hearing from our state senator, Senator Polsky, who would like to speak to us regarding the 2022 legislative session. Senator?
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Have you received any updates from any other state reps or senators thus far?
Yes, we have.
Okay. All right. So I'll keep this kind of brief. The reason that I wanted to come was really to introduce myself to all of you. I represent currently Senate District 29, which is Palm Beach and Broward counties. I do not yet have the pleasure of representing Deerfield Beach. But the reason I wanted to meet with you all is because the redistricting maps that we did in session have changed everything around. And now I am running in District 30, which will include west of Dixie Highway, all of Deerfield Beach. So I really wanted to meet all of you and introduce myself and get to know you a little bit. So I am running in that seat. I'm looking forward to that race and looking forward to getting to know all of you. And, you know, can certainly help with any issues that you have currently, even though I don't currently represent the area. I do represent other parts of Northwest Broward. So I'm not sure exactly what you covered in your prior legislative update. I don't want to repeat anything, but I do want to just highlight a couple of things that I think are really important for all of you. The two requirements that we had during session, every year we're required to pass a balanced budget, and this year was $112 billion. The governor has not received that budget yet to sign. He also has veto power, so he can line by line take out individual projects that those of us who got appropriations in the budget, those could potentially come out, and sometimes that does happen, and sometimes it doesn't. So we shall see what happens with that, but he has not received the budget yet, so it is not finalized. This year, as I mentioned, we had to manage redistricting, and that happens every 10 years as a result of the census. And you may have heard that South Florida, though we all grew over the last 10 years, South Florida did not grow at the same pace as other parts of the state. Therefore, we had to shrink our districts a little bit, and we did lose one state Senate seat. It kind of affects your area because it turns out that, so I'm running in the part that used to be represented by, I believe, Senator Farmer, and Senator Farmer is now running for a judge seat. The east side of Deerfield Beach, my colleague, Senator Pizzo, is running for that seat, and I do not think he has opposition yet at this point in time. He has represented North Miami, and he's a great senator, so I think hopefully the two of us will be sharing the responsibilities to represent Deerfield Beach, and so we work very well together, and we would look forward to working with you. So that is, so let me tell you a little about the redistricting. So the state house and state senate maps were done pretty well, efficiently. You didn't hear much about them. Probably there's no litigation, which is pretty shocking. So that means they were done in a very fair manner, and they were voted on in a bipartisan manner, and I think almost unanimously. I did vote for those maps. Where you're hearing some noise is with respect to the congressional maps. So the state legislature also draws up the congressional maps, and we did so during session, and that went well during session as far as we were concerned. Again, I voted for that map. It was considered to be pretty fair, and a lot of outside folks looked at it and thought that they were fair. And Florida is required to set its districts according to fair districts, which was an amendment that everyone voted on years ago. So then it turns out that the governor decided that he didn't like those maps and he was going to veto them. So we knew this was happening. We still in the Senate and the House held strong on the maps and decided to pass them anyway. As was promised, the governor did veto the maps. So now a few weeks go by and the governor says, we're going to have a special session and we're going to, I'm going to offer you a map and I want you to pass it. And the Senate and the House certainly could have proposed their own maps and they decided not to. So they gave in to the governor's map, even though a few weeks prior they had felt that that map was not fair or constitutional. Every Republican voted yes on the maps and every Democrat voted no on the maps. So here, now you have it. The maps passed because the Republicans have the majority in both houses and the governor signed it. And it is being litigated as we speak. So for the congressional seats, I guess they're a little bit up in the air, but that is the current state of redistricting. Just to touch on one or two important bills that you may have heard about that affect cities, we always have preemption bills every year. And it's very frustrating. We just keep going back over and over again about the erosion of home rule. I vote almost every time as long as I can on preserving home rule and preserving the right of you all as elected officials to run your city the way you've been elected to do and that you see fit and is right for your community. But the state, for some reason, feels it's very important to preempt a lot of your powers. And so this year, the bill that passed as Senate Bill 620, which allows local businesses, if they lose 15% of their profits due to an ordinance, to sue the government, your government, for example. So I'm sure you're aware of that. I'm sure you've been working with the League of Cities on that. But anyway, that is the one that passed. There were a couple of others, wage ordinance, and another one relating to lawsuits that did not pass. The other kind of good news is that the Airbnb bill did not pass either. It was heard in committee, and again, for multiple years in a row, did not make it past the finish line. So that's an important bill. And one other good bill, a good home rule bill, is that you can regulate smoking in public parks and beaches, as you have been doing, and now the government will allow you. Well, not the state government says we will not preempt you from doing that. So that's a good piece of news for you all. Just to kind of sum it up, there were a lot of important issues that we did not deal with. As you know, we have a property insurance crisis. It's the #1 issue that I hear in my office. And we did have some bills. I don't think they really would have done so much to fix the crisis, but they did not make it through on the House side. So we are going back on May 23rd to see what the next step is in this property insurance crisis, to see what kind of bills they come up with that they think might solve the issue. The issue being that many insurance companies are leaving, dropping customers, and then too many people are ending up, about 1 million, on Citizens Insurance, the insurance company of last resort. And if, God forbid, we have a hurricane or anything, then we're going to really be in big trouble, because that is state-backed. So there are certain reforms that we can do, and I hope that we have a productive session when we go back, because it's just too important to let go of. I hope that we focus on the one issue. When we went back for redistricting a few weeks ago, unfortunately, we were dealing with all that Disney nonsense that you may have heard about. And what it does is it distracts us from the main issue. So property insurance is really important, and I hope that we don't have anything else that pops up. Unfortunately, we can find out about these things last minute. We found out about Disney about 3 hours before we gavelled in. The rules that we normally have in regular session about notice did not apply in special session. So we just don't know what we're dealing with until we get there. We should be dealing also with building safety inspections. Again, the Senate passed the bill, the House did not take it up in response to the Surfside tragedy. I'm sure you all care very much about that issue, being coastal and having large buildings. And so I think it's important that we deal with this head on. And we were promised that we were going to, and again, we failed. It's really unfortunate that we spent an awful lot of time dealing with what I'll call red meat culture war issues that had nothing to do with real problems of real Floridians during session, and we didn't deal with the important issues like housing affordability, property insurance, et cetera, during regular session. So just want to end on one note, because it is top of mind for everyone. And I know this isn't really a city issue, but I think it's important. I just want to talk about abortion for 1 minute. So just in case you didn't know, for those of you who are listening, the state did pass and the governor signed a 15-week ban on abortion with no exceptions for rape or incest or human trafficking. And I wanted to bring that up so you know where Florida stands, because obviously we're all talking about the Supreme Court decision. If the Supreme Court decision is what we expect it to be and Roe versus Wade is overturned, then Florida will have the ability to keep the law that they just signed or enact more draconian law and potentially ban abortion completely next year in session. So just something to keep your eye on. So much happens in the state legislature, from education, healthcare, budgeting, obviously, so many other issues, day-to-day lives, that I just hope that everyone pays attention to what goes on in Tallahassee. After this special session, we're off. Hopefully we don't go back for another special until after the November elections. But we are working in the district. We are doing, working with our constituents, dealing with constituent issues, going to district events. So if there's anything going on in Deerfield that you would like me to attend, I'd be more than happy to do so. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to meet you all, even virtually, and hopefully I'll be able to come down to a meeting in person. Sorry, our wires got a little crossed with this meeting today, so I wasn't able to get there in person. But I appreciate the time, and I look forward to meeting you. And if anyone has any questions, let me just throw out my email address. It's very easy to find me on the web, but it's polsky.tina@flsenate.gov. As I said, easy to find me on the Florida Senate website, to contact me that way. We're here to help in any way we can. And thank you very much for having me tonight. And if anyone has any questions, I'm available.
Thank you very much, Senator. We really appreciate it. Not seeing any questions, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. Again, thank you very much, Senator. We move on to item number 3. The Coast Guard estimates that human error accounts for most boating accidents, and that life jackets can prevent nearly 86% of boating fatalities. During National Safe Boating Week, we seek to raise awareness to improve safety and reduce accidents on our nation's waterways. The Coast Guard offers these tips to reduce risk: carrying life-saving emergency distress and communications equipment, wearing life jackets, attending safe boating courses, participating in free boat safety checks, and staying sober when navigating, especially those of you at the Boca Bash for the past few weekends. The extra effort that goes into taking these kind of precautions will help create fun-filled adventures for you and your family. Now, the City of Deerfield Beach is calling upon all citizens to boat smart, boat safe, wear a life jacket, and practice safe boating habits year-round. So now, therefore, I, Bill Gans, the mayor of the City of Deerfield Beach, do hereby support the goals of the North American Safe Boating Campaign, proclaimed May 21st through the 22nd, 2022, as National Safe Boating Week and the start of our year-round effort to promote safe boating. We have from the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 37, Commander Gail Edelman here. We'd like to present this with you. So I say a few words.
Yeah,
Right in the microphone right there, if you don't mind.
Our mission with the Coast Guard Auxiliary is to promote boating safety. We teach boating safety classes. We actually have one scheduled for May 21st at the Charlotte Brewery Center in Pompano Beach, which is the neighbor here. But we do vessel exams at Pioneer Park here in Deerfield Beach when the Pioneer Park boat ramps are open, and we're hoping that they're going to reopen soon. We are out here trying to make sure that everybody who is out on the water is safe. And if anybody has any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. My colleague just kindly pointed out to me that my counting is off tonight. I skipped item number 2, and I'd like him to do the honors. Commissioner Preston, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think that as a community, as a state, as a country, that we're becoming increasingly aware of the dangers of mental illness. And we're just losing so many people as a result of this. It's a very serious crisis that is invading our communities. And we just lost Naomi Judd to mental illness. So it is important that we just keep that, be very conscientious of that. This is a proclamation for the National Alliance of Mental Illness, Broward. The recipient tonight is going to be Donna Lynn. Is she here? Okay. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, Broward wants to share the message of hope for recovery with the residents of Broward touched by mental illness and expand the conversation that mental illness is a common and treatable condition. Whereas the National Alliance of Mental Illness mission is to bring awareness and programs to Broward County in support of a world-class treatment and recovery system for people with mental illness and their families. Whereas the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Broward works to provide support, education, and advocacy to promote better outcomes for people living with mental illness. And whereas good mental health is critical to the well-being of individuals, families, communities, schools, and businesses, and whereas mental illness are medical illness, good health care includes mental health care. Additionally, the earlier the treatment, the better the outcome. And whereas mental illness are no one's fault and are common and treatable, 1 in 5 adults will experience a mental illness in any given year. Half of all mental health conditions began by the age of 14, and 75% began by the age of 24. And whereas the depth of the mental health crisis among children under the age of 18 is staggering, and the COVID-19 pandemic has only exacerbated it. In the first half of 2021, Children's Hospital reported a 45% increase in the number of cases of self-injury and suicide. The exacerbation impact on the pandemic of mental illness is significant for adults, whereas half of children and adults living with mental illness never receive life-changing treatment. And our mayor, our mayor, Bill Gantz, now proclaimed the recognition of mental illness in the month of May.
For item number 4, we have a certificate in honoring what is National Beach Safety Week. Now, we're very blessed in the city of Deerfield Beach to have one of the most beautiful beaches in all the state of Florida. And the city of Deerfield Beach, besides having just this world-renowned recreational resource that we have for us, still needs to, we recognize the fact that as great as our beach is, it needs to be safe. And we have the finest ocean rescue team in the entire country, as far as I'm concerned, here in the city of Deerfield Beach. The city of Deerfield Beach would like to recognize that May 23rd through May 30th is National Beach Safety Week. Now, here are a few tips that you need to have to help keep our beach beautiful and keep it safe. Always swim the guarded area. Check daily warning flags and read beach conditions posted on each lifeguard tower. Never swim while lightning is present. Remember that alcohol and swimming do not mix. Always consider putting on sunscreen. Drink lots of fluids, especially water, to stay hydrated. Learn rip current safety and obey lifeguard warnings and city ordinances. The city urges all residents and visitors to be safe and enjoy themselves on the beach this year. And we would like to proclaim that May 23rd through the 30th is National Beach Safety Week. And I see, is Mr. Brown here? Oh, we have, excellent. Chief Brown is here from our Ocean Rescue. I recognize him in a suit. Next, we'd like to bring up Captain Adam Hofstein from BSO.
Good evening, Commissioners, Vice Mayor, Mayor, Mr. City Manager, Deerfield Beach community. Always appreciate the opportunity and honor to be here to recognize fine work that our folks do, which often goes behind the scenes. This recognition is particularly fitting for this month, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. And thank you, Commissioner Preston, for that presentation. What I want to talk about today is just the fantastic work of all of our deputies, of course, but particularly two. You know, they do so much day in, day out to protect this community, but there's really nothing more noble and rewarding than actually saving a life. And, you know, I can attest that our folks do that every day, whether directly and often indirectly, the actions they take that lead to a safer community and protecting those that we love and hold dear. But sometimes a true hero comes along, like these two deputies. Deputy Padron, you step forward, please, while I present this honor. Unfortunately, his partner, Deputy Hernandez, cannot be here tonight in person, but he's monitoring virtually. I talk about a hero. You know, this is a deputy who had an opportunity. I'm just going to be vague about the dates to protect the victim of this and the sensitivity and confidentiality of it. But, you know, sadly, we talk about mental health and the challenge that the society faces with suicide. A young lady had decided that she was going to suspend herself from a highway overpass here in the city of Deerfield Beach. And obviously had indicated that she was going to hurt herself or kill herself, sadly. And this was called in, and our deputies responded. And Deputy Padron was one of the deputies that responded. And, you know, the deputies have such a challenge on their hands to coordinate traffic, answer a radio. But most importantly, what Deputy Padron recognized was the importance and need to save a life. And he stepped forward selflessly, if you will, without hesitation. And, you know, these are situations, again, he doesn't know what kind of threat is posed to him. All he knew is he had to take some type of action. And he stepped forward, he developed a rapport with this young lady. And there was no instant gratification. It was not easy. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes dedication. And it takes a lot of heart and humanity. And that's what he demonstrated. And he successfully brought this lady, young woman, back over from being suspended over this overpass and saved her life. And this happened again, but maybe 2 months later. Deputy Hernandez stepped forward and faced the same challenge at a different location with similar circumstances, where a young man, again, looking to end his life, sadly, whatever challenges were facing him. And Deputy Hernandez, again, took the time to develop that rapport and show something above and beyond just being a person in a uniform, but displaying some compassion and understanding and making that human connection. He too was able to successfully bring this gentleman back from the abyss. And so for that, simply, I just want to recognize and commend these two deputies for being true life heroes and the lives they saved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of tonight's agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Go ahead.
Yes, that would be good right now.
Oh, my apologies.
Sorry, City Attorney, go ahead.
Now on item number 7 of tonight's agenda, and my understanding is the applicant's representative, Mr. Feiner, is here, and they will be presenting items number 7 and 8 together. Is that correct, Mr. Feiner? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the titles in for item number 7 and item number 8. Item number 7 is an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, rezoning approximately 1.59 gross acres located at 341, 351, 381, 421, and 441 Southwest 10th Court from Business Community B1 to Residence Multifamily RM15, application 21-R64, approving the applicant's request for the allocation of 18 flex units, providing for a maximum of 18 townhouse dwelling units, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date. That is second reading of the rezoning ordinance. And then item number 8 is application number 21 RM 1564, which is a site plan from Casual Friday DB 10th Street Townhomes LLC, represented by Shift Construction and Development, seeking approval to construct 18 townhomes on the property located at 341, 351, 381, 421, and 441 Southwest 10th Court. Mr. Feiner, as you know, you and your client have the right to a quasi-judicial hearing. So after stating your name and address for the record, if you could just let us know when you choose to wait.
Of course, sir. Rod Feiner, I'm an attorney with Coker and Feiner, 1404 South Andrews Avenue, on behalf of the applicant and we waive. And if I could take the bull by the horns, I know Mr. Soroka read both together. It's okay that we can combine the hearing for both, even though I know separate standards and separate votes would have to be on both. Right? That's what that would be more consistent and make for a more even presentation, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening. You can see our PowerPoint up there. I'm going to, we did this about a month ago, if you recall, on just first reading for the rezoning. I'm going to go very briefly through the rezoning, get into more detail on the site plan, and tell you what's occurred since first reading. But of course, if you have any questions while we're going through this, I'm happy to assist. So this is, we are proposing to rezone the property from B1 to RM18, constructing 18 townhomes, two nine-home buildings on the property. We believe that this is a good gateway project into the area, that they're between the beaches and 95 in this area. This is a perfect example for what you want for residential, not necessarily commercial. The property is zoned B1. If you could go to the next slide, please. So this just again shows you in essence where the property is located. You can see it's located not exactly on Southwest 10th Street. It's actually located on Southwest. I'm sorry, my reading glasses on Southwest 10th Court is where it's located, and then between this property and Southwest 10th Street is the city's linear park. So that's significant. You can go to the next slide, please. Because you can see here, you can see where the property is, see where the park is. There's no direct access from Southwest 10th Street. So normally if you had a commercial development, you would want access to it from directly Southwest 10th Street. If this was a commercial development right now you're putting commercial traffic into the residential neighborhood that's here. And when we were looking at this whole development, we said that's probably not a good idea. Because you'll increase traffic, and it could be depending upon uses for earlier late night hours. And you can see also from this slide, and the next slide, please. That the next slide, the RM18 really is more consistent with what's in the area. We have a church on one side. Next slide, please. Keep going. So there you go. You can see that it's RS5, so it's the south, and then RM18, RM15 directly further south, and then you have a PUD residential development to the north on the other side of Southwest 10th Street. So this really fits much more into a residential zoning than the B1 would. And so that's, again, the reason for the rezoning. The flex unit application, so you know, is to make this consistent with the comp plan. And I just think that's important because you'll hear that the RM15 zoning district, because of the size of this property, could allow even more units, but that can't happen without coming back to you and you approving it. By the way, not that there are plans, but everyone always worries, what if something happens in the future? That can't happen because you control the flex units. So even if you're allowed more by the zoning district, you control the flex units. So we're bound by those 18 units, assuming you grant those. Okay, it can't. The only way to come back is to come back before you, either us or someone else, and it's not our plan to do that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So that just highlights what we did, what we just talked about. Well, let me say this. When you look at that slide, you can see we highlighted some of the commercial uses that are allowed on B1 properties right now. We think that's a significant because
If I could pause you for one moment, can
Yes,
you
sir.
please close the screen for those, so we don't have the camera just showing. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor, we appreciate it. So just a couple of things that could be allowed in this zoning district: convenience store, a restaurant with outdoor seating, a brew pub, provide 50% of its food, the receipts are food, with outdoor seating, a laundromat, offices. You could also get home fitness or fitness centers. I'll just use an example like a retro fitness in F45 or an Orange 30, which hold classes starting as early as 5 a.m. and go till 10 or 11 o'clock with their classes. A retro fitness is open 24 hours, which is allowed under your code. So it could do that. So we look at that, and then you also say that residential development actually generates less traffic than commercial development. We'll get to what our traffic engineer reviewed and did this in a moment, but as a whole, residential development generates less traffic than commercial development, especially during AM and PM peak hours and other areas. So this is actually less intense in terms of trips in the area with this result. Next slide, please. And so here you can see what is proposed. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that. As I recognize Commissioner Drosky from the last meeting said the devil is in the details with the site plan. We're going to get into those details in just a second. But here's the proposal. Just real quickly, you can see the 9 buildings that are there. You can see that there's a 25-foot separation between the building where you can see through to the park. What's going on? You can also see the driveways that's there, where each townhome on the ends, there are 2-car garages. In the middle, there's 1-car garage. And then you have the driveway where you can fit 2 additional cars. So each unit can automatically fit 3 cars, sometimes 4, depending on it is. And then a couple of the other things I always want to point out. With this rezoning, staff has requested, semi-mandated, which we're fine to do, a dedication of right-of-way along Southwest 10th Court so that the street can meet the minimum requirements of width for the city streets. So we are doing that. We're also dedicating some property along Southwest 4th Terrace to meet those minimum requirements. That's the street just to the west of us. We're also putting in sidewalks in the front of our property and along Southwest 4th Terrace. So there's public connectivity. If you want to go from the park and walk back into the neighborhood, that's going to be able to occur from this development. If you go to the next slide, please. You know, we could get into the differences between B1 and RM15. Let's just say that instead RM15 is much more restrictive than B1 in terms of setbacks, lot coverage, percentage of landscape required on the site than what B1 is. A perfect example is B1 has 10-foot setbacks, RM15 has 25 setbacks. So, I mean, that's just 15 feet on each sides, and the rear and the front right there that would not otherwise be required. Next slide, please. Okay, now we'll get into more of the devil of the details of the site plan. Like I mentioned, the RM15 zoning district would allow us to do 23 units on the site. We're not requesting that. We purposely, after looking at this, wanted to be good residential neighbors to the residents, wanted to do something that was compatible with the residential neighborhood. We restricted the units to 18 units only. They are anywhere between, I think, about 1,600 square feet up to 2,400 square feet. They have 3 bedrooms. We think this would be multi-generational potentially, or something where we all purposely put a bedroom on the ground floor as well as some on the upstairs. There was a concern by the neighbors raised at certain times when we were talking, wondering if there was going to be activities allowed on the roof of these townhomes. It is not. The roofs are not open for public or for the access of the owners. So everything will occur inside the townhome. Next slide, please. This just gives you some site plan data of what's required by and the code of RM, if assuming it's only goes through to RM15, of what is required and what's proposed. And as you can see, we're less than what was done on every single time. So we're less than what's the required amount. So for instance, we have greater amount of landscaping, we have less lot coverage than what's required under RM15 as a whole, which is significantly less than B1 as well. Next slide, please. So here's an example of some of the elevations. You can see, and Mr. Bullock is here. He's our project architect. I'm going to call him up in just a second. He's going to explain to you a little bit more about the elevations and how we took time to really design what we believe is a quality project for this area. And you'll see there's differences in where the units, the doors of the units are. Some are closer to the roadway, some are further set back, and the reason is that breaks up the architecture, so you don't have a safe flat front. There is landscaping all along the front of this property. There's more street landscaping that we're putting in. There's landscaping along the rear of the property adjacent to the park with a aluminum picket type fence that goes around the corner and the rear of the property, because we also had to separate this property from the city park, requirement by the police as well as several other ones. But we wanted to seem like we were part of the community, which is why it's not a solid CPS wall. That's not what the intent is. We want to be part of this. If you can go to the next slide, please. And that's just, so the color scheme, let me be clear about this. This is not the color scheme. The color scheme is going to be more in earth tones. Brian will talk about that. But here's an example of what you can see what the property is going to look like from the front. You see some of the landscaping is there. The fence that's on the right, you can see the different fenestrations of the buildings, how there are balconies facing both the street and the park to encourage people that interact with each other in the community. And with that, Brian, coming up. And then what I'm going to do is, I know that I have not addressed some of the residents made concerns, and you asked if we would further meet with the residents before coming here. We did that. That's what I'm going to finish up with and tell you about that. And then, so after Mr. Bullock goes, you'll see my face, unfortunately, one more time.
Hi, good evening. My name is Brian Bullock, architect, local architect here. I've got office here since 1990, so I've been at it for a while. I just want to take a moment to thank you guys for everything you do. Appreciate it. Basically, yeah, just to kind of speak a little bit more about some of the things we did. We put a lot of effort, a lot of heart into this project, and we did everything we could to try and really create a home that, I mean, honestly, I would love to have this across the street from my own house. I think it's a beautiful place to live, and basically some of the things, some things we did is that although it wasn't required, obviously we made a lot of effort to incorporate many of the items as possible from the Pineapple Grove standard, which is kind of like the flagship standard for the city of Deerfield Beach. So we incorporate a lot of those elements in the architecture to try and be an example of what the architecture should be for the city. We work closely with the staff to ensure that we're basically asking for no variances and no exceptions, no waivers to the code. So once we've fallen into this format of the zoning, the change of the zoning, basically this would be in 100% compliance. We're not asking for anything extra beyond that. Basically with that, if you look at the building, you'll see that we've kind of gone with a subtle color palette. We've used a lot of different materials to articulate the expression lines of the building. We're trying to keep it to a human scale and not just have, again, like this, some developers will come in and just say, I want to max out maximum square foot, go right up to the limits. And we're not doing that. We're holding it back. We want it, each unit in this townhouse project, we want it to feel like individual homes. We want to give people the sense that maybe it's not just one single building, but that there are multiple different, families that are living there in separate homes. The styling of the project is what we call it's transitional design, which we kind of take some contemporary elements and some traditional elements of architecture and merge them together. And so it kind of gives a familiar feel of traditional architecture, but also modernizes it in a way that makes it a little bit more exciting and unique. We've incorporated a lot of elements in this building that we feel are sort of family oriented. And our thought process is basically that these buildings are for families. They're not for people who are just on vacation or people who are transient. It's really more for like families. So even on the ground floor, we have a bedroom in every single unit that's set up for aging in place. Thinking that some people may want to buy these units and have their grandparents live in with them on the first floor and not have to go up the stairs, things like that. Most units have 3 bedrooms, some of them have 2. They all have an office, which could also be converted into potentially a room in the future if that person wanted to. So there's plenty of bedrooms if you have a larger family. It's kind of oriented towards that. We took all of the front doors and faced them towards Southwest 10th Court. And we did intentionally. We're trying to incorporate ourselves into this residential community and not face the other way towards Southwest 10th Street, create an alley or create some kind of road on the other side. We want to kind of embrace the neighborhood and become a part of it. And that was just kind of the design concept. Basically, the square footage of these units, some of them are, the smaller ones are 1,955 square feet, the larger ones are 2,243 square feet. And again, although they are considered a townhouse project, if you look, you can see on the renderings, everything steps in and out, and it kind of gives a very nice relief to the front facade. We did make these units much smaller than we could have based on the zoning code that's there now. Again, we only chose to do 18 units, even though the zoning would allow for 23. We just felt like 23 units was maybe too much, too many units for this. So we reduced that. We're trying to reduce our impact just enough to make the project work. We split it into 2 different sections and leave a nice gap between the 2 buildings. Again, to try and let more air and light pass through the project and be respectful to the neighborhood. That's pretty much it. I mean, if you guys have any other questions about the specifics of the site plan, I'm happy to answer those.
Well, do you want to do it now, sir? or you
We'll
want to
keep going. We'll save it to the end. That's okay.
Sure. Next slide, please. Thanks, Brian. This is just an excerpt. This is the second page of the traffic study that we're going to see, because one of the items that was brought up by the residents when we met with them was concern over traffic. And you can see actually on the conclusions where we talk about this, that Mr. Peterson, who's a licensed professional engineer, who is a specializing in traffic engineer, he actually works as a consultant for several cities, as well as working for private. If you look, his analysis is this development is going to lead to 9 a.m. peak hour trips, 19 total PM peak hour trips, and then on conclusions, he says based upon the trip generation analysis, and by the way, this is based off of ITE standards, which are the International Transportation Engineer Standards. It's a book published that all traffic engineers use. It is evident that the number of trips to be generated is considered to be minimal or de minimis. So that means minimal impact from this development in terms of additional trips in the neighborhood. Now, granted, I'm not going to come up here and lie or say anything else. I hate it when people say that because it seems like they're saying I lied beforehand. But you know, this is going to generate a little bit more traffic than it being vacant land, right? We all know vacant land doesn't do anything, but this would generate a lot less in commercial and it generates an insignificant amount of trips according to Mr. Peterson. Next slide, please. So at the last hearing, it was asked if we would be willing to speak with the residents. We said we would. And what we did was immediately after that meeting, we started coordinating with city staff and some of the residents to find an appropriate place and time to have a meeting. That meeting occurred April 27th at the Hillsborough Community Center. It occurred from about 6 to about 7:40. About 20 to 30 people were in attendance at that meeting. We started off with informal discussions and then had a more formal discussion with some back and forth. I'm going to hit some of the highlights on this and let you know that following that meeting, the developer really sat back and considered what some of the residents' concerns were, and we're here to offer some additional conditions for you as well, based upon the meetings with the residents, which we think addresses some of their concerns and what they said. Their major targets were parking capacity, on-street parking. As I said, we dealt with that. There is no on-street parking permitted as part of this project. We didn't make space for it, but what we do have is more than sufficient parking in the driveways and the garages when we look at it. It's 3 or 4 spaces each. There should be more than sufficient parking spaces for that. The citizens were concerned about this being used for Airbnbs or short-term rentals. Okay, and we understand that concern. As a matter of fact, they said that several homes in their neighborhood were currently being used that way, and they didn't want to see any more of that. We agree with that. That's not the intent or the purpose of this development. So what we're proposing, and you can make this as a condition of site plan approval, or just make sure you see our development documents before we apply for building permits, is that there will be a restriction in the Declaration of Homeowners Association that prohibits any leases from being less than 6 months duration in time. So we're going to force them, if you buy it, it's going to be 6 months. Now, you know, some people have said, well, in the past, there was a limitation on how many years you had to own it before you could lease, right? We looked at that as well, and that doesn't really work. And let me explain why. Well, A, after that original time period is over, then the person can start doing short-term leases. And B, more importantly, I think if anything over the last 2 years has taught us with COVID is that we don't know what's coming down in the future. And people could have either lost jobs or suffered financial issues or done something else like that, where they may no longer be able to have to live in the premises, but so they need to rent it out to make their mortgage payment, because the last thing that anyone wants is to see these units go into foreclosure, right? That doesn't help the residents, it doesn't help the association, it doesn't do anything. So God forbid someone suffers financial issues or financial hardship, they can still go rent it, and they can rent it for a minimum time period of 6 months. That stops all the short-term rentals right then and there. In addition, the residents said, well, it's nice that you have that in your declaration, but once a developer sells the units and they leave, they can amend the documents any way they want. And that's true. And there's nothing a developer can do that will ever prohibit them from doing that. But what we can do, and what we've covenanted to do, in thinking about this issue, is we've agreed that any amendment to the declaration, the homeowner declaration, has to be passed by 66% of the members, not just the regular 51. And we did that because that means a super majority of the residents in that development have to agree to amend the declaration. And that's about as best as we can do on that legally, because we just can't, you cannot make the declaration such that it can never be amended. It would fail legally. In addition, the residents indicated that they had some concerns about dust control, the hours of when construction would occur. We'll abide by city code when the hours of construction would occur. And I think Mr. Schiff said we're not going to start before 8, and we're going to stop by about 5 o'clock. And we also covenanted that, I'm not sure if your code allows Sunday construction or not, but we covenanted there will be no construction on Sundays at all. We agree with that. We have no desire to be doing construction while people are going to the houses of worship in the area. People were concerned about the traffic patterns where people, they didn't want to go on to Southwest 10th Street. We're cutting down either Southwest 3rd Avenue or Southwest 4th Avenue, and then cutting down either Southwest 10th Street or Southwest 11th Street, going too fast on that. Honestly, if that's an existing condition, this development isn't going to cause that to occur more often than not. We understand the residents' concerns. We appreciate it. We could do, if the city wanted us, we could do a traffic study 6 months afterwards to analyze the efforts and see what occurred with this. But really, we understand their concerns. Widening of 10th Court will help with that somehow, because you're making it a true 2-lane city street, which is what the city wanted to do, and that's what we're doing. So we've tried to address the city comments there. Some of the city comments also mentioned they had issues with site triangles and disability issues at 4th Terrace and 3rd Avenue with 10th Street. They thought some of the landscaping that was installed by the city was blocking their view from coming in or being able to make safe and active turn movements. Obviously, that's not our property or what we do, but we did say, as we're going through permitting and whatever else, we'll work with engineering, if engineering needs us to do trimming or do whatever we can do for the city. We'll do that. We just need the city permission to do that. Again, but that's not us. Anything that we're developing was reviewed by your city engineering staff. We have clear site triangles on all corners of our street. So that what a site triangle is, and again, this is for members of the public, it means if you're going to be turning on a corner, you have to be able to look around the corner both ways, see if there's oncoming traffic. Landscaping is not allowed to be there or anything else. We've designed this in that manner while still exceeding what's required by the landscape code. And finally, one of the other points that we talked about with the neighborhood was they wanted us to somehow contribute to the neighborhood or act like we're part of the neighborhood. It was thought originally that they asked if they could be as part of, someone from the neighborhood could be a member of the townhome association. That's not allowed. It can only be an owner of the townhome. But what we did suggest to the citizens is 2 things. At the meeting, we suggested if they wanted to form a civic association, and that's obviously a non-mandatory membership, but it would be a nonprofit for residents in this area. We would help them form it, and we could even make sure that the townhome development had at least 1 member on that board of directors. If the residents want that, we're more than willing to do that. The other thing we look back is to really try and make an impact in the development of what we're doing. Is the developer really thought about that? Various ideas were talked about landscaping or scholarships or something that the developer could set up. We didn't want to be responsible for administering any type of scholarship one way or the other. And there are several churches in the area that we didn't want to pick and choose from. So what we're going to agree to voluntarily do is make an $18,000 donation to the city. Okay. That donation, the city manager and the commission can decide what they want to do with it. We would suggest that either be used for a scholarship in the area, because the city can then either allocate that scholarship, has the ability to determine who gets a scholarship for a citizen in the area, or give money to the Rotary, because they already have a scholarship program. I remember that from the last meeting we were here. They could do that, or that money could be used to both beautify the park and the landscaping in the neighborhood, that the city could do that as well. we're not gonna say how that should done, but we want to be an active part of the community. So we're willing to make that donation to do that. That's voluntary. It's not any promises of anything. It's just what the developer wanted to do. We heard the residents when they were talking. I will tell you in complete honesty, we couldn't make all the residents happy. All right. And 18 units is what's needed to make this project work. Okay. We looked at trying to maybe cut units down or whatever. It just doesn't work. At that point, it's better off to be commercial, in all honesty. It just doesn't work with a smaller number of units, but we did look at that. And so we try to give a good product that the residents would be happy with, that they know this would be part of the community, while still trying to address their concerns. And with that, both I'm happy to answer any questions. My client, who is in the back, is happy to answer any questions. Brian is here to answer any of your questions about the site plan.
Excellent, thank you. I'm going to start with District 2, and then we'll go to District 3. Mr. Carson.
Yes, I talked with Mr. Schiff about this issue, and as I said, it is important for anyone that's coming into the community to be able to listen to the concerns of those that live within the community. And so many of the residents felt like the second meeting that took place over in Hillsborough Center was not that productive. And you know, Mr. Schiff and I had some very productive conversations. And you know, he made the $18,000 donation to the city for landscaping, and he addressed the rental concern with the 6 months, nothing under 6 months. Also, he consented to mirror where the project sits. Just to the west of that is a little area there, and there was a suggestion of putting a bench on the other side at the part of where Pastor Ford's linear park actually begins close to Dixie Highway. And he agreed to, you know, basically mirror that situation.
Yes, sir. And you can add that as a condition. We do agree with that. I omitted that, so I apologize. That is correct, sir.
So, you know, there was some productive conversation that was made, and some of the concerns of the community were addressed. I think an $18,000 donation to have some of the resources in that area for landscaping is very important. It could change how things look in the area, and so you know, I'm happy that you were able to make those amendments. So,
Thank you. Mr. Parnas.
First question, who's gonna own the lawns?
Who's going to mow the lawns? Or
No, who's gonna own the lawns?
Well, the walls, the associations.
The lawns.
Lawns. Oh, each individual town owner, they're fee simple,
Okay,
but they're responsible for. There's a line where you can get into the back, where landscapers can go and get into the back, and the association has the ability to find someone if they're not upkeeping their lawns and landscaping.
the reason I'm asking that is individual owners of homes have a tree obligation that's countywide. And so if the association owns the lawns, it's different than if individuals do.
Yeah,
So
no.
please be aware of that,
Yes, sir.
number one. In condos, in order to change the bylaws of the association, you need 75% of a vote to change the bylaws of the association. Why not the same for an HOA?
It's not, but if you want to do 75, we can do 75. It's not, we can do that. I've drafted condo docs. Usually it's not that, but it can be that. So we'll do that as well. We're not trying to do something, you know, or
Okay.
pull something. It can be 75%. That's fine.
I would think that once the reason that condo law says 75%, it's not that easy to get changes. It has to be well thought out, and 75% of the people who own apartments in a condo or homes in a condominium association need to approve those changes so that a minor board cannot roughshod over the residents and change the rules. Everybody going in knows what the rules are and abide by them. That would be my other suggestion.
We will do that, that's fine.
Other than that, I think it'll be in addition to the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You know, as a dais, we have an obligation to not only protect our residents, but also look for ways to improve our city. This individual owns this property, so he has a right to do with that property as he or she pleases. Our job is to make sure that this property does not disrupt the residential neighborhood. Everything that I'm hearing is this property owner is doing everything they can to not only not disrupt this neighborhood, but also to add enhancements to this property. As the slide said, this property owner can come in here and put up a barn. And he can put up a nice big barn, and you know that would seriously adversely affect this neighborhood, and there's nothing that the dais can do about it because it is allowed. This property owner could put up 23 units, and they're only putting up 18. So I understand the concerns that the neighborhood has, but again, it's been a vacant lot for a long time. And yes, when you have something on a vacant lot, it is going to increase the traffic. No matter what it is, you put up one house on a vacant lot, it's going to increase the traffic. The city does have a program where if residents feel that individuals are speeding through their roads, we can put up speed bumps to make sure we can put up speed bumps. So, you know, that's something that if you're concerned about speeders, that's something that you can look into. I'm very excited about the prospect of this property. I'm very glad to hear that we're doing everything we can to protect it from being a short-term rental. So I'm definitely in favor for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Drosky?
Good segue, Vice Mayor, because I wanted to pick up on your last comment there with respect to the short-term rentals, because Mr. Finer, that's what I mentioned last time when you were sitting back there in the corner. I looked at you and said, hey, with the rental restriction, and I want my colleagues to think, because we haven't heard from the public yet, so I want you all to kind of marinate on this as well. And you too, Mr. Finer, and I've discussed it with staff and have kind of mental gymnastics on my own, but is the 6-month rental restriction enough that we can do? I understand you were talking about why not to do the restriction, for example, to own it for a particular period of time and the reasons for it. But would a combination of those two maybe be a little better for this property? For example, maybe to own it for 1 year and then in addition have a 6-month restriction to it. And here's why I'm struggling with this is because these 18 units, I applaud you for wanting to be part of the community and bringing this project, in towards 10th Court, because you could have flipped it around and had it facing 10th Street. You would have had an alleyway or parking on the other side, and then the residents would have been looking at, back walls instead. So now this is a more feel for that community, and I applaud that, and I think that's the way to go. But the flip side of that too is if you have rentals, and maybe this, there's going to be a lot potential in and out of that community. It depends when that 6 months begins. Not every unit is going to have the 6 months start at the same time. So if it's staggered, you could have some rotation of renters in and out. And to be fair to the residents that are on the other side there, to kind of calm that down, because we have other areas in Commissioner Hudak's district, in my district, with these projects where there's just a lot of turnover in and out. And until the state legislature does something about short-term rentals, which they refuse to do the last, X amount of sessions, we, the city, have to kind of take the bull by the horns on our own. And this is one way that we have the opportunity to do that. So just to try and prevent as much in and out as possible. You know, if you want to be part of the community and the people have to own for a year, and I'm just making this up as we go, then that kind of inadvertently forces them to be a part of the community. If these are people who are invested in Deerfield Beach, that are not buying just for an investment to turn around and either flip it or to rent it, but somebody who's going to actually own it and be part of the fabric of that community for a year. So I just want you and my colleagues to think about that. That may be a happy compromise to kind of get some buy-in to that community and in that area, and to keep the rentals, you know, to a minimum, but also to give the folks that buy there some flexibility in the situations that you prevent, and the opportunity that they don't, you know, they have a personal situation that requires them to have to rent. So I throw that out there because I mentioned before at the previous meeting, I think I mentioned a 2-year restriction to own the property. So 1 year plus 6 months
With
is something to think about.
On residential. And just so you know, what I'll do is, I'm going to address that a little bit now, but after I know there are members of the public here that want to speak, we want to listen to them. I'll discuss this with my client. I'll come back and just address that issue if that's okay with the board. But one of the reasons why we did is, you know, no one wants an Airbnb in their neighborhood, and we get that. And so what is an Airbnb? Airbnb is usually a 1-week rental max. No one really does it for that. They do a day rental. You know, God knows, I know my son was trying to do one of those for prom. But they'll do a week rental, usually, or max 2 weeks is really what they'll do for an Airbnb. Those people are not invested in the community. Those people don't want to be part of it. We fixed 6 months because when you're coming to the community for 6 consecutive months, you are in the community for that. Now, we understand that that could be 2 residents within a year, you know, 2 families in 1 unit within a year, and we get that. But again, especially with today, society is very transient or vague on how things do. You generally don't get people who are doing that. And, you know, so that's why we wanted to at least force them to be there for a while still recognizing, you know, what if one person breaches their lease in that time? Does that mean the owner can't rent it out during that period? So at 6 months, that would be fine, and we can cover that. But like I said, let's listen to the public, and I will come back and talk after I talk to my client about that, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on this item? Just come on up to the microphone, what's your name and address for the record, please.
Sir, it's got 180 Southwest 3rd Avenue. I keep trying to tell y'all history. There's been a bar there. There was this bar there, right on the east side of that property. Who cares? It won't hurt us. All we saying is listen to us. Listen to the rest. Listen to the residents. Thank you for the meeting, Mr. Mayor, because you said that it would happen. Commissioner Preston, you went forth. Thank you for that. And the community did speak. And thank you, Commissioner Drosky, for your last comments. Within 6 months, think about it. That ain't gonna stop nobody from doing anything of Airbnbs. And yes, Airbnbs do go longer than a week because travel nurses take Airbnbs for 2 months to 4 months on contract. I know because my cousin is a travel nurse. So we have to look at all of that. These properties do not need to be that. We need some stability in that community. And again, we are not against. We only want to be heard. And not with your conclusion, but from the residents. They have a voice. They do. Listen at them. Hear them. Because if you had put a bar or a laundromat there, okay, you put them other places, and we had to live with it. Who says we can live with that? So don't try to make the scare tactic. Now, if you give us something that's wholesome, in which this could be a good project. But we need to make sure that the residents that's got to live there be heard. And then you say $18,000 in scholarship. Scholarship, when you gonna go over there and beat down the ground over there, and somebody's yard gonna get cracked up and all of that, and we learned this with Mr. Butters, his project, and you leave those residents fixing up their own places back. Why would we put money in the hands of Deerfield Beach when we can put money in those residents, set up something, because it's been done, ask Malcolm Butler how he did it, if I may please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, if you can do me a favor though, can you, you keep talking about wanting to be heard, can you actually get to a point that tells us what you want? Because I'm.
Keep listening.
You got 1
Now,
minute.
If we can take $18,000 and give it to the city of Deerfield, you can give it to those residents to make sure anything happens to their property, that their property is fixed back up. And again, you can help the contractor or the developer can help with landscaping if needed in those yards, or whatever is needed in the residence to make it suitable for everybody. That's all these folks are asking. That's all. So now, Mr. Mayor, here. Thank you.
I still don't understand what you're asking for. Can I ask you a question, Mr. Scott?
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, so you don't want travel nurses for 6 months too?
No, we do not.
You don't want travel nurses?
No,
Okay. No,
they
hold on.
want
You answer my
residents.
question. You answer my question. You don't want travel nurses?
No,
6 months, you think an Airbnb goes longer than 6 months? It doesn't.
no, that's not what I was saying,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor. He said that they could be on a rental fan for 6 months.
6 months.
Into it. No,
Hold on. Airbnbs don't go longer than 6 months, number one. So that would prevent an Airbnb. A rental it can't be less than 6 months. That's what you're putting in there. You're saying it should be longer, is what you're saying.
we want the
No, not we.
clause.
What do you want? Because you don't speak for we. I want you. What do you say? You want what? Longer than 6 months?
I want where there will be no rentals at least for 18 months.
Okay, you realize
They
you
must
can't,
own
you
it.
do realize you can't do that if they were single family homes. You wouldn't be allowed to do that,
And
right?
you know what? Single family homes would be better there.
No. Do you understand that you could not put 18 months?
I do understand that.
All right, so there's really not much difference there. So that's almost impossible to impose, just so you know. That's all, because I'm trying to get clarity on what exactly you're asking.
Okay.
Because it's not clear all the time. If you're saying you prefer to have a bar or a laundromat over residence, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it wouldn't hurt.
It wouldn't hurt. Would you
No.
prefer that over residence?
I probably would.
Okay, thank you. You don't live in that street, though, right?
No, sir,
Perfect.
but I would.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Cheryl Fortier, and I live at 332 Southwest 10th Court. Okay, I live on the street. One quick thing about the speed bump. The city did put in a speed bump. And what happened is my neighborhood, all my neighborhoods to the east of the speed bump, we were flooded. Our lawns was covered in fungus because when the speed bump was put in, the water no longer drained down to the main drainage at the end of the west end of the street. And that's one of my biggest concerns with this. What is the city going to do to improve the drainage? When it rains hard, that street floods from a third to a halfway up my driveway. I cannot tell you how many times we have had to restart because if we've had a really rainy season, the lawns are covered in fungus. Because the road goes like this, to the east, the road is lower, right between 332, 341, and 3rd. Then the road rises, and then it dips again when you get closer to 4th. So we have a problem with water. And like I said, when it rained hard, the whole street floods. So I don't know how this is going to affect that and what, I hear you saying you're gonna widen the street. I mean, half of my swell has already been taken. I don't know how much more swell I will have left. And the city's solution at that time was to come and build a trench in front of my house that became a tripping hazard. Because if anyone was walking there and because of the grass, when you walk, if you didn't know to step, you will automatically go down. And I had to refill that with dirt because people were tripping because of the trench that was dug. So my main concern, a lot of my questions have been answered. I was out of town, I was out of the country with the other meeting. But a lot of my concerns have been answered. And I can live with that. But that drainage on that street needs to be addressed. Because like I said, we're restarting every 2 to 3 years. And with sod at $2.75 a pallet, who's gonna pay for that?
Ms. Vaughn,
And we're not talking about the labor and everything involved.
You don't have sidewalks on your side.
Yes, we
You
have
do?
sidewalks, but the road is sloped.
Right, okay.
So that the road slopes down and all the water comes into the residence yard. Because the parking lot is higher and that lot, those lots are higher. So all the water rolls into our yards. So I would like to know what is going to be done to address that.
Okay.
Okay? And a quick way on the traffic, we have a huge problem with traffic cutting through from Dixie Highway to come out and beat the light. That's another issue that needs to be resolved because there are many kids that live down near 4th Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Vaughn, can I ask you a quick question before you step away? Is that all right?
Sure.
With if the speed bumps were put back in, it did not create a drainage issue for you, would you be okay with that?
I'm not really happy on them because they tear up car suspensions.
Okay, so what would you prefer? Torn up car suspensions or speeding cars? Because it's hard to do anything else to stop.
As long as not my suspension.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Thank you for that. Thank you, I agree.
I just want to say something.
Sure.
We had the same issue on Southwest 8th Street with the speed bumps. And what we had to do was, and we corrected it actually, is when you have the speed bumps that go all the way to the grass, it stops the water flow, like you said. So we actually cut them back and that let the water flow. So if it's a speed bumps that you prefer, we found a way to improve on that. Maybe Priscilla can talk a little bit about it. And I don't know if we're doing anything with regards to flooding on that road, but maybe we can run that with the developer as
Several
well.
times. And
Now that we have a developer there, I don't know if Priscilla can talk a little bit
We
about
can
that
at the
road.
end if that's all right.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
For sure.
all right.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm John Williams, 114 Southwest 7th Court. Also, I'm a deacon at Bethlehem Missionary Baptist Church. Well, I heard the gentleman speaking on see, we're changing the zoning to help them, right? Because it was zone commercial, right? We're changing the zoning to help them, right? To what they want to build. So if we wanted to, you all being our city commissioners, we can change that zoning and say, hey, we're going to expand the linear park. I looked at the area zoning, the area picture of the whole neighborhood, and then I look on Tivoli's side and I see all of the greenery that they have, and it's green. I see more buildings of this area, zoning. So we're saying we need to develop, and last time I was here, I spoke on, I'm all for development, but when I look at this area that's already developed, that little bit of greenery that we have right there, that should have been added on to the park. That should have been for the people. So But if we are gonna develop, I think 18 units is too much. I mean, you got 6 lots that you wanna put 9 units on. I could see 2 units on each lot, you know what I'm saying? But they're joined together, but 18 units, I think that's too much for that street. That's me being born and raised here, and I'm in this neighborhood. I watch the traffic. I think there's too many units on that. So that's all I have to say. I mean, we can consider changing that to a park. We appreciate the developers and all of that there, but when I look at the area, that area is already there. We have buildings and all. We have 2 greenery areas off of Dixie Highway and that little spot, and we have Mill Howard Park. That's it. Development, what development we need to do? We're already developed. We need more greenery.
So are you suggesting the city of Deerfield Beach buy the private land and turn it into a park?
Amen. Let's all get together and let's raise some money. Let's buy a gym to a park. If they can't, lessen the units or we can't come to agreement, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just so everyone realizes, we can't just change zoning to a park and a privately owned property and just expect it to be a park. We would have to purchase it. That's why I posed that question.
Janice Boomer Tigner, 1090 Southwest Fourth Terrace, Deerfield Beach, Florida. I'm just gonna hit some bullet points here, and then I want to make a little comment towards the items that they're saying that they're going to give us. We spoke about cost and affordable, these items that we discussed at the meeting the other night, cost of affordable housing, making perhaps some of the units available to first-time homeowner buyers for the city of Deerfield for their program, if that's possible to be done. The cost that the houses will be is not something that's going to be conducive for the people or for our neighborhood. If even working firefighters or teachers or what have you, they're not going to be able to afford $500,000 home right there in your own community, in your own area. So that's going to be a little issue. What type of people are they looking to attract? Not opposed again to being built, but please hear all our concerns. The privacy fencing. You speak that they're going to be fencing like the black rail fence that I had asked them about. I know he's going to try to talk to them, but I asked them about the type of the black fences that are on like the railroad track. Well, you look at that as not being private, because if that back is to that linear park sidewalk, say if someone wanted to put a pool there or a sunbathe out there, if that area is open and those gated open pits, people are walking by there, that's not privacy. You don't know what type of people are going to be there. Are there going to be background checks on those people that live in there? You don't know what type of people are going to be there for people and children that are walking along that sidewalk. So can they change that and make privacy fences on the back towards the park so that is not a visual, if you kind of understand what I'm saying. Then also talking in the dialogue that we got and some resistance that we got to the homeowners that were there at the meeting, the last meeting here, and at the technology center. At the end, it came out okay, but at the beginning it was a little rough, and we did have to address that and to kind of have things calm down, because we need to be addressed as human beings and as city residents and homeowners that live in this city. And at times we were not respected, so we need to. If they want respect, they need to give respect in order to get it. So that came upon. Continuous dialogue with us as long as the project is being done. Make sure that we are abreast along the way as things go if this is passed. A laundromat being put there as a business area would not harm us at all, because we will be able to go and not have to go way across 10th Street, way over somewhere else to do a laundromat if the business zone was able to be done. Mr. Williams mentioned the park. We mentioned the bench. They said they were going to put a bench there. I think that a beautification project that's already there.
So another minute. Yeah, ask me.
I'm sorry. To have that mirror to facing, they said they're going to put a sidewalk coming off of Southwest 10th Street onto 4th Terrace, then let that sidewalk continue around, but mirror what's already there. So that means that the beautification that's already there for the linear parkway, make it mirror on the other side. So as Mr. John said, that some type of a park or something there for us to take a rest on, because now when we get off that sidewalk, we're walking into the street. Rental issues. I know we're City of Deerfield, I know City of Pompano does it. There's up to somewhere places, there's up to 5 years that you can put, if you're building those buildings, make that stipulation, and we don't want in and outers just coming in and going out. We need to know if you're buying into Deerfield, that you're gonna stay into Deerfield, and that you have your interest there, and we want to know who's around us where we lay our heads at. The height of the buildings, bring them down some, or single families. Also ask the city to
Thank you, ma'am.
please.
Appreciate
My
it.
time is up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
What's the last thing you were gonna say?
The last thing I was going to say is that, my very last comment was that we, the traffic calming, they addressed that, so hopefully we can get that done before the project starts, because sometimes when projects get started, some things get tripped
So,
aside.
so you would be in favor of traffic calming?
We tried it, and before we exited at District 2 meeting, am I right, Mr. President, to the park, the city supervisor back there, and she had got my information, supposed to get back with me about traffic calming. So if some neighbors did not sign that form, please let us know who didn't sign it. So I walk the streets because I'm the one who's been walking it to ask for the signatures, because we are in need of it. And just today, I spoke to Commissioner Preston, and we were standing on the side of the road, and cars literally zoomed right on by us. So my last comment was, we are not angry people, just concerned and caring residents about where we lay our heads. And we ask that they meet us. And that $18,000, let us see where it's going before it's just given to the city. We want to know what's going to be.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you for answering my question. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Shanetsky. I live in 34 Keswick B, Deerfield Beach, 33442. I just want to first say, I'm not a resident of District 2. I live in District 3. I've been proud to live in Century Village for over 20 years. But I'm a Floridian and I am a Deerfield Beach resident, so I want to give my opinion. Also, I went to the community meeting that they had 2 weeks ago at the Hillsborough Technology Center, and I listened to both sides, and I formed an opinion also, and I feel as a Deerfield Beach resident, I have a right to say it. Florida needs housing, that's the bottom line. Deerfield Beach has a housing shortage. Deerfield Beach needs housing. Now, these are upscale houses that I truly believe will enhance the property value of the area and the community. I also want to say, living in Century Village, which has been in existence since 1979, several years ago, Sandpiper Point townhouses was put right next to Century Village. In fact, the property was part of Century Village and it became separate. It's been 2 years since Sandpiper Point townhouses has been made, and it's been excellent. It's been peaceful. They have a new entrance on Goldsby. At the time, a lot of the residents were afraid as well. But in the 2 years that Sandpiper Point townhouses has been up, it's been fantastic, very peaceful. Now, these townhouses are $567,000, two-story, three-bedroom townhouses. They're 18,000 to 19,000 square feet, but they fit into the community. There's a wall as well that separates them from Century Village, but melds in with the community. So I want to say, as a resident of Century Village that saw this type of upscale development, everything has been okay. I mean, I took a bike ride around the Century Village area early in the morning, and I was looking at the townhouses you could see over, and it's beautiful. It's part of the community. So I just want to say that. And the last meeting from 2 weeks ago was well publicized that I knew about it. So I believe that the developers have done everything possible to make this accessible and friendly to the community, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Willie R. Graham Gracie, and I live at 501 Northwest Bridge Terrace in Alwood Homes. And I'm gonna piggyback on what he just said. It would be feasible for the people over in Central Village area to live that way because everybody over there mostly is retired. But in the neighborhood where they're building it apartments at, it's a lot of kids over there. And I already asked them the other day. They say that they're gonna put across Bethlehem parking lot, they're gonna put a fence across there. But now with a fence doesn't keep people from parking there, but they'll park on the other side of the fence. And so I wonder, but they put a sign up there say, if you park over there, you're gonna be towed away by the city.
That's private property, correct?
Bethlehem Missionary Baptist Church
Right.
parking lot.
It was private. They have the control of being able to tell people if they want. Yes.
But who put the sign up? Who has to put the sign up?
I believe when they hire whoever they're gonna have as their towing company, they can put the sign that they
Oh, we
provide.
don't have a towing company, but I mean.
You would need one to be able to do that on
We need one
private
to-
property.
For the people that not to park on your property, because if they don't have a party or anything, they don't park where they see a vacant spot it. And like that, like she said about her grass, I understand what you're talking about, because where I live at, my yard is low, and I was wondering why my grass was dying so much. Every time it rained and that Makita Park is there, and everything blew over there in my yard, it kills my grass. But nobody don't come and clean those drains out of it.
Thank you, ma'am. I have Gwen Clark Reed online.
Thank you, Mayor. Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way. Mayor, my concern with this project is the traffic and the traffic flow from 4th on to 10th Street. And I don't know, I don't know if there's a sign that says you can only go east, but the traffic coming out of that street, they are cutting across trying to go west. And there have been numerous accidents right at that corner. So I think that's something that you're talking about, widening 10th Court and it's coming on to 4th. You need to look at how that traffic flows from 4th on to 10th Street. Is there a right turn only? Or are you going to put some kind of signalization there, which I don't think you can do because it's too close to 3rd Avenue. But something has to be done with the flow of traffic right there. The cost of the homes. I was concerned about the cost of the homes because the median income in the neighborhood and the cost of those, the price that those homes are selling for in the neighborhood right now are up in $300,000 range. So bringing in this $500,000 luxury apartment, I don't see where that is going to keep up with the residents who are there, that the residents who will be moving into these apartments. I don't see where they have any compatibility with the residents who are living there now. You talked about the zoning. You know, you talk about the zoning as if it's a threat to the community about what can go there. Certain things are regulated in this city as to how the distance from the project that they can exist. So I was just concerned that every time we talk about the project, it's like a liquor store is a negative. No, it's not a negative because it's regulated, and it's regulated to where it can go in the city. So a B1 was not something that the community was against, but we would have preferred to see RM5 as is the other side of the road. The meeting that we had with the developer, It didn't seem like they really wanted to understand what the residents were asking for. I
Would you
do
like
not.
another minute now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I do not live right in that area, but I have to go through there. So the traffic is the biggest concern to me, and where the parking would be for all of these people who are going to be moving into this complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Tanya, 48, I'm at 921 Southwest 12th Court. I was going to say exactly what Commissioner Reed just said, that I just don't feel like that development fits that area. And I just really feel like it's going to come down, there's going to be more of a problem than a solution. I know the city wants to be beautified. I know you want to attract certain kind of people into the area, but consider who already lives there. That's the only thing I ask.
Okay, so I'm confused. I'm going to ask you to help me along on what your thought process. You said it doesn't fit. The townhome doesn't fit because it's a big part of the. Is it because of the cost of the project and how much those homes are going to be?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I think it's going to create more of an issue than it is a solution.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't see anyone else online. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak?
Amy K. Tanner, 111 Southeast Fifth Avenue, over Tanner Lake, Newport Beach. As I looked at didn't get to look at the site plan of the buildings, but this is in the Pioneer Grove area, isn't it? As I understand what we initially started talking about the Pioneer Grove.
No, it doesn't bleed into that. No.
This doesn't come in
No,
Pioneer.
it's across the street.
It's across the street from
I
Pioneer.
believe that's correct. Am I correct in that?
It doesn't
The
seem
overlay?
to- Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead, I'll let you get to your point.
absolutely.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'll let you get to your point.
It just doesn't seem to conform to what we're trying to introduce. It's an overall area in Deerfield, and even if it's not in it, if it's next to it, it just seems to be different, according to how I understand the theme. And the 3-story buildings going into an area where there are not other 3-story buildings, it seems to be like an overpowering. I'm just saying this because I want to understand it. If someone came into my neighborhood and all of a sudden they were, how much, you count 10 feet, 12 feet of a story, but it's sort of overpowering, whereas they're all single family homes and families, it just seems to be not to fit well. But, and also I have a question, there's been several people that mentioned 18 units in what across the street would be 4 houses, but then you have 18 units. I'm just confused. I'm afraid that as a neighborhood, it would encroach on the neighborhood. As I say, I'm not in that neighborhood, but I have a feeling for it, and I've driven down that area for many years. So I would like for the residents to be considered and sort of visualize what it will be if you lived in that house and every morning when you came out to go to work, there was this big castle across the street from you. And I didn't notice if they're going to have any recreation area, or they're planning a pool in that development.
No,
No,
it's just townhomes. Yeah.
it's just townhouses, no no community center or no,
No,
no, okay, well, I didn't know that.
no, that's okay.
Okay, good, now I know it. And again, traffic. I have a speed bump exactly in front of my house in the middle. And it's almost like a red flag for some people. Oh boy, I can sail over that. Sometimes it's challenging to people. But I am worried about the traffic with children in the neighborhood. I know children they come and go. We have children now. We didn't have them for many years in my neighborhood, but now there's kids. And
Thank you, ma'am. So another minute?
I'll stop. I can say more, but I'll stop. Okay, thank you.
Let me give you one if you'd like.
Hello, my name is Janet Pierce. I live at 1111 Southwest School here in Broward. And I own property that is right on the corner of 4th Terrace and 11th, which is just right behind the church. I can sit in my front door and look and see exactly what they're planning on putting this development. And I wasn't going to get up and say anything because, I do appreciate the fact that the developers did, set up that meeting. They came out and spoke to us. He outlined some of the things that we discussed, as well as Janice outlined some of the things that we discussed. And in that meeting, I noticed that, like they said, it's divided. Some people are for it, some people are against it. You've heard all the different reasons. I stood up because if someone that doesn't live in my neighborhood can get up and say something, I felt like I did too. I agreed with exactly what she said. It's going to change the whole character of the neighborhood. I was telling my daughter the other day, I said, I cannot imagine driving from 95 or either coming from Dixie down 10th Street and looking up and seeing these monstrosities, even though it's beautiful. It is beautiful. I just don't think it needs to be as high as they have it planned or as many units as they plan. So consider that. I'm for development. I don't have a problem with that, but I think it could be. And I know this is private property, and as you said, he can do what he wants with his up to a certain point. And I hear him keep saying that, they decided that they didn't want to do 23 units, but I recall him saying at the meetings that the county or someone else told him that it couldn't do 23 units. So it's not like they just voluntarily decided to do 18 units. They couldn't put in the 23. So, I like the other ones, don't have a problem if it remains business. We can live with all that stuff, especially if we don't have that much height. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pierce, I have a question for you. Last meeting, you were worried about construction issues. Is those construction issues, concerns that you had, did those get resolved in the meeting that took place?
Before I arrived at the meeting, my daughter had a conversation with the developer, and he assured her that they had the proper liability insurance to cover if any damages to the home. They also said that they would send out notices to let us know in advance before construction started so that we could take pictures of our property. So should some damage occur, we would have the proof of how it was before and how, what the damage is caused from construction.
Okay.
So,
You feel pretty good about that?
and that there's some coverage, hopefully we'll be able to access. And one other thing too, with this whole scholarship thing, it's $18,000. I just wouldn't like to see that money didn't go to the neighborhood, that it ended up someplace else, or, if that's the intent for it to help with the neighborhood, that it's administered properly and that it's not pillaged, plundered in any kind of way. Even if the residents who wanted something done would have to put in some type of application to request some funds to help them do something to improve their health.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else? Not seeing anyone else, I'm going to go ahead and close it. Let me just make sure. Close it to the public. Commissioner Preston, do you want to comment first?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. There are a number of concerns that needs to be addressed in this situation. with this project. The gentleman stood up from Century Village and he said there's a housing need, and there is a housing need. But nobody here didn't say that there wasn't a need for that. It's how the housing comes to their community, and that needs to be understood. Would this project be intrusive? It will be somewhat. Why? Because nothing is there now. And it's going to change the face of the neighborhood. It is definitely going to be somewhat intrusive, but it takes a while to get used to projects, and that's what it's going to take. But here's what we know definitively. We know definitively that there is a person who is actually listening to the community. I can tell you that the city is not going to purchase property. I would like to see something like that done, but I can tell you the city is not going to purchase property. And, you know, let's just say, like Mr. Williams was saying, make a park. Would that be a good thing? Yeah, it would be. But it's not going to happen because the city has no interest in going that way. This gentleman purchased this property with the idea to develop it. And what we're faced with is how that project introduces itself to the community. And, but we have to accept certain things. Even if he did not build, it's not going to remain that way. Somebody's going to purchase the property and they're going to develop it. It's not going to just stay that way. So here's what I think that is important is that when you're discussing something of this magnitude, do you have someone that you can actually talk to that is listening? And I think we need to just take a look at a couple of things. Number one, the $18,000 when the gentleman that's representing the corporation, that was never discussed, at least in detail with me, with Mr. Schiff. It was for the community. It was for landscaping. That's where it needs to stay. It needs to stay with the people. That's number one. And I would ask Mr. Schiff and his team to look at whether a year and a half has been suggested. Is that too much? I don't think that it is. I think that's a real concern, a year and a half before there can be any type of renting and that sort of thing, I think is important. But then the neighborhood also has to look is that he did not fight the idea of mirroring one project to another. So we do know this definitively, that we have someone that we can talk to and that is listening. Let's assume for a second that he decides to sell the property, and he could do that and make a profit. And see that he does that. The next developer that comes in may not be willing to speak. It's also important to understand there is nothing that the city of Deerfield Beach can do legally to make anybody sit down and talk with the community. Now, that's something that we ask developers to do, is to sit down, talk with the community, hear their concerns, and see what it is that they can do in terms of bridging gaps. But there's nothing legally. And why I'm saying that is he could have said, you know what? I'm not going to talk to anybody. And there's nothing that anybody can do. And the project can go. But we do know definitively, we have someone that not only is talking to the community, but is listening to the community. $18,000 for landscaping, that's a good thing. A year, 6 months, 6 months to address the rental situation, I think that should be moved, but he was willing to move on that where there wasn't any movement. And the bench for Preston Ford Linear Park, one side mirroring the other, that's a good thing. I think that the private fence situation needs to be addressed, because if you have it so that the fence kids can look through there, they could very well see something that's inappropriate. And that's not good for kids to look at. That's important. But when you come to the traffic situation and traffic concerns of all the residents, I really wouldn't want him to be involved myself. This is me. I would rather the city take that on, because that's their job, to make sure that your lives are not being changed because of parking. We have more resources than Mr. Schiff could ever have, be able to address those concerns. And we need to be able to do that. But it is not right for someone to say that comes from another community, and not live in that community, he can give his opinion. He's more than right to give his opinion. But if you're not familiar with the environment, if you're not familiar with the people, then how can you be familiar with the concerns? And so there has been good on both sides. And I think that if we can address the private fence situation, the rental situation, moving that up, that's basically it. I think if we do that, we'll be okay.
Well, first, just a few things. And I'm just going to say this. Sheldon comes from another area. Kate Dan doesn't live in this neighborhood either. She shared her opinion. Everybody's allowed to share their opinion, like you said. Like you said, he has his opinion. Here's one unique thing to think about it. When they built those sandpiper units, and you probably remember this, those came in, the residents didn't want it over there. They fought against it. There was no, and a lot of their fears they had of what was of the unknown, which I think is a big part of the fears that people have, ended up not materializing. The project went pretty smooth. We don't have any complaints. We didn't have any issues. We worked through them. So it is good to hear other people's perspectives. I certainly don't want, because I know that's not what you intend, but if you come across that a little way, and I know that's not true because I know you, that if anyone from any area can come and speak about anything that goes on in any area of the city, certainly the people that are right. I mean, we're hearing from people who live maybe in the same district, but not even close to that neighborhood, sharing their opinion, and they're not chastised. So it should be open to everybody, you know. So that's the thing that I want to make sure that we're not sending that message across on this. Let's start with the zoning first, okay? Here's why, you know, the question was raised that we're changing the zoning because it's going to benefit the developer. No, not necessarily. This is what they're asking for, but here's why I think the zoning needs to change. I can't believe I have people saying that they would prefer to see a liquor store there. They would be okay with that. To show how different districts react in different areas are, there's a dry cleaner located at Power Line Road right by Independence Bay. Independence Bay was up in arms. They did not want a dry cleaner there. Furious that a dry cleaner was going in. Fought like heck against it. I voted against it. It went in there. It's in there. And yet I have people said we don't have a problem with dry cleaners. And it was interesting because I remember those arguments. This goes back probably 8 years ago. Was that there was a lot of chemicals involved with dry cleaning. It could be very dangerous. They didn't want that spill going into the neighborhoods, so people were very concerned. So it is interesting to hear different neighborhoods have different tolerances for different things. I never thought I'd have somebody, much less a former elected official, say they were okay with a liquor store going in the spot. That to me is shocking. They're welcome to their opinions. But here's what my concern is, and we can bring up the map of the location, please, an overhead aerial. Here's why I think it should go residential as opposed to commercial, because it's not like what's on the rest of the road. I have all my notes from the last meeting, what different people said before then, and I'll wait until we bring this up because it's important to look at this. So, and I want it zoomed in closer so you can actually see the parcel as opposed to where it's located. We all know where it's located. I think maybe the next slide. Next slide should be able to take care of it. Okay. So right now this is commercial. If you're on 10th Street, you have the linear park that's there. Where's your frontage for your business going to go? And where's your traffic going to flow? Commercial property, commercially zoned property generates more traffic than residential. Not making that up, that's just a fact. It is a fact, okay? That means everybody coming off 10th Street going to go into that commercial property, whether it be dry cleaner, liquor store, whatever people think they're okay with, they're going to have to go over to 10th Court, Southwest 10th Court. How much traffic am I putting in that neighborhood if I keep it zoned the way it is right now? Because they can't come off 10th Street and go right into the property because there's a park there. They can't have a driveway that cuts through the park. I'm not going to let them, I don't think any of this will, to get to their commercial property. So now where's the frontage going to go? If that's the case. So if I got a commercial property and I'm putting there where it says 1.5588 acres, I want to put a commercial property. Am I going to face it where the entrance is facing 10th Street? Now that's where the best advertising is, because if I'm a person that's gonna put my business in there, I'm gonna wanna make sure that people can see where my business is. So it's gonna face out. But that means they have to park in the back, because there's no parking in the front, no access in the front. They're gonna drive down a residential street to get to it, park in the back, and walk around to the front. Now, if the city tells them, turn it around, we want your storefront facing those residents. And this can go up with the way it's zoned out. What's the height that it can go up to, Mr. Powers?
For a commercial property,
Yeah,
75 feet,
75 feet. What can it do for residential?
55 feet.
55 feet. So currently the way it's zoned is 75 feet. So someone can build 75 feet, put their storefront facing those residents. Doesn't sound like a good plan for me. I would not want that for me there. If I live there, I wouldn't want that. Because if you want to look how ugly it can be, if you flip it and you put the back of that store towards 10th Street, go over to Hillsborough and Powerline Road. Take a look at the Target Shopping Center there, in which, because it was allowed to happen, they put in I believe it's a mattress store, knock mattress store, whatever stores are there. The front of their store faces to the north. You drive by, you're like, what the heck is that? So they put a bunch of ugly signs in the back to try to let people know what that building is. That building is right up on Hillsborough. And we talked about setbacks. Isn't the setbacks further on a residential than it is on commercial? Am I incorrect? Is that what I heard in the presentation? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, yes, for residence property, the setback is only 25 feet. It's actually further back than it was commercial property.
So commercial property would be further back?
No, commercial property actually closer.
Closer. Okay. So we talked about setbacks. I believe we had someone on the phone said about setbacks. This actually would allow that to be closer to the residents than what a residential setback is. So I don't see where it makes sense to change this. And to say that there was a bar there hasn't been a bar there in decades. You're okay with that? I don't know how that works. As a resident, and those of you who live in the street, I don't think you guys are going to be okay with that. So when we talk about people that come from others that don't live in that area, I want to hear from the people on that street. I'm pretty sure they don't want a bar and they don't want a liquor store. Now, I'm not trying to say that to be the boogeyman and say this is what's going in there. But what I'm saying is what's allowed and what we have limited ability to prevent is if we don't change the zoning. The zoning has to change, in my opinion. Because right now, the fact that they're going to widen that street, which is 10th Court, that needs to happen. The setbacks are going to be further back. The traffic pattern that would happen from a commercial thing doesn't make sense to me. I think it would be a disaster for that neighborhood and would really destroy the quality of life. The people that are certainly on 10th Court facing that's very strongly my opinion. You worry about where people are going to park. It's all empty there. Now, where do people park when the people that live there have parties? I would imagine they're probably not parking over at Bethlehem. They're going to park in those empty lots that are there now. So I think when it comes to addressing some of those parking issues and illegal parking issues, that's regardless of what goes there, we can address that. I think we should address that for sure. I think that needs to happen. But I'm focused more on the rezoning before we get into how it's going in there and everything like that. I don't like the idea, and I think it's ridiculous to say we're going to get a developer to give money, we're going to put towards scholarships in neighborhoods. Is that what we're going to do in the city of Deerfield Beach? Every time there's a developer, we're going to say we want you to give us money, it's going to go to a scholarship, but only the people that are around there. Something doesn't sound right on that. I like what Ms. Kearse said, is I want to make sure I know where that money's going. And that money should go into either improving the linear park or any of the green space that is around them. It's not enough to buy the land, but it's certainly enough to improve the land that's there. And I respect that. Look, ideally, yeah, make it a park. I'm all on board, but it's private property. It doesn't quite work that way. We know change would come. The zoning, I think, needs to change. So if you're looking for my vote on the zoning change, you have my vote on the zoning change. I think it needs to change. I think it's a betterment to the community. I think once we made that a linear park, it changed the potential of that. Because if it wasn't for a linear park being there, you probably could have moved the commercial property a little bit closer. Not much, because I don't think you could, because I think that land is, I think there's some setbacks from the highway there. But you could have made it different and given them an access point off 10th Street, which would have made it probably safer for the residents, but I still think it would have been a problem. So I think the zoning needs to change. So that's my comments on that. There's a couple of questions that were brought up and interesting points that were brought up. I think traffic calming is very tricky. We hear arguments on both sides here. I have people complaining that they're worried about who's going to live in those houses. And we don't want lower people or implying that bad people are going to live there. We want to know who's going to be putting their heads there, but you don't want expensive housing in there also. Expensive housing tends to weed out. Some people would believe the truth of the matter is all housing is expensive now. There's all housing is expensive. As far as where the price point is, it's a scary market. It's very difficult to say you can't sell your home for that or the property that they're building for that. So that becomes a little bit tricky on that. But I think the biggest thing that I hear, at least from some people, and I think it's maybe it's because they fear talking about it and they fear airing it out there, or maybe they just don't want to be straightforward. But I think gentrification is what people fear. We talk about compatibility and what goes here and what goes in place and what happens, and when people start getting forced out, we put higher end housing and things in there. And I understand that, and that's very real. And that's something all of us need to be sensitive to up here. I heard previous arguments, and I don't see them here tonight, but I see a whole bunch of my notes from the last meeting. They were worried about this being townhomes, and that shouldn't be there. And then they didn't want apartments, they wanted townhomes, they didn't want townhomes, wanted single family homes. Let's be real. Single family home goes there, you don't know who's going to live in there. You can't put these same restrictions on there. It's a house, it goes up and goes in there, goes in there. You have more control in the townhome and building this little association, so to speak. You're not building a three-person association. Changing it from 75 to 65%, you go from 14 residents that have a vote or 12 residents that have a vote. That's the only difference. Not a big deal. So we can argue it either way. It's not a big deal when it comes to that. To me, it's a bit of a wash. And I'm trying to address all the different points that are here, but where I live, there are apartments and there are townhomes and there are single family homes and there's commercial. It all bleeds differently into the neighborhoods. Some of it starts with, might be a town or apartment complex first, then there's townhomes, and then there's a bunch of residents. That's what we have here. The transit, I'm glad this isn't going to be a rental problem. I think that's huge for us. And that makes me feel better about changing the zoning now. It being a townhome is not a bad thing. I think the number of units is a problem. I think the height is a problem. But here's the bigger problem. Bigger problem is the way the zoning is now, that height can go a lot higher. Even in the zoning category if we change it to that, they can go higher than what they're asking for. It is going to change the landscape of that neighborhood over there. Any change that happens over there is going to change it. It's going to change the traffic. It's going to, how bad? Depends. I think traffic calming could go in there, but traffic calming is depending on what usually the residents on that street want. That's the way we do it. I think we can do traffic calming. I think we could probably talk to the developer about working with us on that and putting that in place if it's needed. But I certainly don't want it where it's creating a flooding issue for anyone that's over there. I'm jumping around because I'm trying to keep up with all my notes because a lot of people spoke on this. I want to make sure I cover it. But I believe, I'm sorry. I believe that covers everything I had to say. I am concerned about the height. I don't know if that can be changed. As far as the fencing, I think that's relatively minor. As far as privacy fencing, I think probably the goal with putting that type of fencing is that it feels a less walled in for that neighborhood. If you put a solid concrete fence that's there, a lot of people might not want. So if you put that type of fencing and put a vegetation, say there's people going to peek in and something's going on in the backyard, you can do that any yard there is doesn't have a fence. And we've seen some weird stuff. I know you probably heard some complaints, but it happens. It happens. So, but that's something that I'm sure the developer would want to work out. And as Commissioner Preston pointed out, we have a developer that seems to be willing to talk to everybody. I know we can't make everybody happy on this. I'm going to circle back to saying for the zoning part of it, I'm certainly in favor of the zoning. I probably want to get into a little bit more with the second part of the approval, but I'm good with the zone. Hopefully addressed everybody's questions with this.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to come back and address a couple of the issues that we talked about before I sit down, some of the things the residents said. The young lady who talked about how she was worried about construction, well, we promised to give a 2-week notice beforehand so they could document everything. That is exactly correct. We will promise to do that, and the general contractor has a full liability insurance policy. That's how he does all his jobs. He actually does work for Broward County and a bunch of municipalities, so that they require all those insurance policies to be in effect. The other I'm going to do the other things, and then we'll get to the ownership issue. The drainage issue, Broward County actually requires us, and they reviewed this through surface water management, requires us to maintain all our own stormwater on the site. So we are not allowed to discharge our stormwater off-site. Broward County rule. We satisfy Broward County. They reviewed it and they analyze it like a 50 or 100-year storm event when they analyze it. So it's not just the typical rainfall, it's a significant rainfall, and we satisfy that. Finally, what I wanted to talk about was both the height and then the restrictions. And I heard some issues about the height, and I understand that. And the mayor was 100% correct about what could go there now. But more importantly than that, I want to also point out that the height, while it's also set back 25 feet from the roadway. So when you look at the height, that's even further back, because it's not going to be as intrusive as what you might think it is, because it's set back so far with those residences. So it doesn't create shadows in the neighborhood. It won't do anything like that. That's why it's set back that far. So it's really not as intrusive as some of the residents may think. And finally, I'd like to address the issue of the rentals and ownership. I spoke with my client while this was ongoing and paying attention to the residents. Instead of a 6-month time limit on rental, we would agree to have put in the declaration and a site plan condition a 1-year rental restriction. What I mean by that is no leases less than 1 year in time. You can only rent for a year at a time. So, okay, so instead of one every 6 months, it's 1 year is the rental. What we don't want, and I've heard it said, and what we really don't think we can agree to, is the ownership restriction for a time period. And I'll give, besides, we don't know what economics are going to bring or anything else. The other thing we're concerned about is, say people are wanting to buy this and they have to close on it when it's done, but they're moving from another area. And their home in that other area hasn't sold yet. So they don't want to move in until that area is sold, or what's going on. Well, now we're saying you're buying it, but you can't even, rent it for a year while you're waiting to sell your home somewhere else. That could create a problem in both sales and then future ownership as we go on. So what we do is what we think is that 1 year, minimum 1 year ownership. That gets you the continuity that you want in the neighborhood. It gets you that you get to know your neighbors in the neighborhood, and you get people that are invested in the neighborhood because they're there for a year. And that would and with that, just like in a condominium, this HOA is going to require background and credit checks for any owner or any renter. That's almost every HOA does that these days. And that's actually the only thing you can look at, but they will do that. Any renter and owner would have to be approved by the HOA, which is criminal background checks and creditworthiness, because you want to make sure that they can pay the monthly association. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I do have a quick question from Mr. Power. There was a comment made that Pompano has this and Deerfield can do this for the 5-year no rentals. Is that accurate?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. I don't know if anywhere does that. I don't think you can. And I don't know of a single development that we built or allowed to be built in the city in a single family home, anything, that we say you can't turn around and rent out your private property that you purchased with that type of restriction like that. I've never heard of that. Limiting now the way it's set up to limit how many months and how small leases can be, that's very different. And I'm glad we're able to do that. And I think a year is certainly better than 6 months. So that would help. Maybe not to the travel nurses, but to others. So we should see. Commissioner Parnas?
In my condo, you have to live in the apartment for a year before you can rent it. That's in our bylaws, and it's upheld. It was challenged and upheld. You have to live there for a year before you can rent or sell. Is there an exception for hardship? Sure, your husband was killed in a car accident, you have no income. There are always circumstances, but general rule, no. And it's been upheld. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, what are you approving?
I'm approving the first.
Number 7, the
Number
zoning
7.
change. Okay. Okay.
Second.
Ms. Smith, second from Commissioner, Vice Mayor Hudak. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Okay, you're now on the site plan item number 8. You will need a separate vote on that.
So I have a question for you. You said that certainly that setback helps where it's at. Is it the possibility of being able to lower the height on these units?
Not really. The way they've been designed, lowering the height doesn't really work with the gables of the roof and everything. It doesn't work. The real height on the units is about 31, 32 feet. Is what we're talking about here. Is what we're talking about. So dropping that means we would have to drop the ceilings or something else, which is a confined space, which doesn't really work for these type of towns. We did look at that, by the way, when after the residential meeting, we went back and looked at that.
And Commissioner Preston, I'm gonna look to you on this. As far as whether it be the fencing in the back, the conformity and how it wraps into your park, how that goes, and maybe even the traffic calming. I'll look for your guidance on that. But I'm, I would like to see the height lower. I understand that's a huge ask when you've got this kind of thing laid out the way it is, because I think it probably is a big change. And I know you're below what could go in there. And I also don't buy that hey, we could go to 23 units and we're only doing 18. Come on. It's not a given. It's not a given. You probably couldn't do it. So
We actually could, we laid it out.
You laid it
but
out?
We did. But let me also add, as to the fence issue, there is flush landscaping inside the fence on each unit. So that acts as a de facto without creating that, excuse me for saying so, prisoner confining backyard. And the backyards are really too small for it. We can't.
And
Through the park, yes, sir.
Yeah.
now the bench that was discussed, do you understand exactly, what was proposed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And we agree to that. And I don't know if Mr. Soroka is okay with this, but if or when the time comes that a motion is made, just subject to the conditions agreed upon by the applicant, where we can flesh out the resolution. I'm okay with that. We've worked in the past together.
Yeah, that's fine. It's always my recommendation, if they're voluntarily offering it, that you make it a condition of approval and get it down in writing.
We have no issue with that.
The traffic calming issue. Again, my position on this is I'd like to know what you could actually do that could be effective in the community when it comes to that. I heard the lady talking about her lawn getting fungus from it, and that's because it has to be that wherever that bump was put in, that it created a lower elevation there, because water is going to flow to its lowest point. And so with that, maybe that you need to just remove it from where it is. So I just like to know from you, what would you guys do?
There's no traffic calming. There are no speed humps, speed tables, whatever you want to call it, on the street now. We could, if the city wants on our property, we could put a slow children at play sign or something like that. And I know it was mentioned that the city has a program where the ESO could come and monitor it during like rush hour and flag skiers or something along those lines. If they needed to stay on our property to do that, we could do that. But that's where we are with traffic on.
So you would work with the city and
Yes, sir.
VSO to make sure that that does not become an issue.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Drosky, then Vice President Hudak.
So I just want to comment on the traffic calming issue because especially the residents that are still here, it's careful what you wish for on the traffic calming because you put traffic calming on street A, and I've seen this in District 4. It happens all the time. You put traffic on calming on street A, and what happens? The speeders immediately divert to street B. And they speed on that street that doesn't have the traffic calming. So all you're doing is you're pushing the speeders deeper into your neighborhood. I've seen it, it happens. So just be careful with the traffic calming. I'm all for it. I'll tell the residents in my district, I will support you on it, but just be aware that you're going to be needing traffic calming on additional streets because traffic and speeding is a problem, not just in Deerfield Beach, but all of South Florida, maybe all of Florida. So just be careful with traffic calming because there are unintended consequences with that. So, and I just want to be clear when, if a motion is made, what we're talking about, my notes have the now 1 year rental restriction to be included. The park bench that Commissioner Preston was talking about, the additional $18,000 for landscaping, I think is what it was. We wanted to have it earmarked for, not a scholarship. And like the mayor, this, whether it's 66 or 75% in the HOA documents to have an amendment, I'm okay with either, but I think those 4 things at a minimum have to be part of any motion plus whatever I may have missed. So I just want to clarify that as we go forward.
We would agree with that, and we'd add one more. That I did commit to at the meeting, and I said here, but that 2 weeks prior to the start of commencement of construction, the owner will give notice to the neighborhood that construction is going to commence in 2 weeks. So that gives them time to document, take photographs or whatever they want to do. And we're abiding by that commitment. So I echo everything Commissioner Drosky said, but I would add that as well.
Thank you. You may want to do that by signage on the property as well.
We'll do that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Mayor Hudak and Commissioner Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that wasn't addressed with the comments on flooding, I know that you'll be widening the road, but I'm hopeful that you will work with the city engineer to make sure that the grade is changed. Because one of the challenges, again, with the speed bumps is when they're the grass, that's what impedes the water from flowing. So when you cut it back, it actually lets the water flow. But if the grade of the road is not corrected, then that's where you're going to get the issues of having those low-lying areas. So I'm hoping that you'll be working with the city, and when you're widening this road, you're also improving the grade so that you can, improve the flow of the water.
Right, we'll be working with city engineering during curbing. Those are permanent issues. So we handle during curbing.
Yeah. Well, just to piggyback,
If it gets approved.
when you widen that road, is that coming closer to your property? Or is that going into
Right. All of it's on what would be our property that is being owned.
Okay.
It's not
So when
going
it
any
widens,
closer to the
it's going
residents.
towards them as opposed to towards.
Right, it's going closer towards 10th Street is where it is.
That's perfect. Thank you. Vice Mayor. I'm sorry, you done? Vice
Yes,
Mayor?
I'm
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Preston.
Thank you. I just wanted to say to my colleague, Commissioner Drosky, those are some great points you make because it's actually what happens when you put in that traffic calming, it does push it further in. However, in this situation, it's basically 2 streets. So if you got traffic coming on both, that squeezes them out.
With that, you want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
And and just for clarification, the motion is the motion to approve item number 8, the site plan for the community, and that's with the 5 conditions, the 1 year minimum term for leasing. It wasn't clear to me whether we're going with 66 or 75%. Maybe you can let me know. Commissioner Preston, would you prefer on the voting requirement for changing the documents?
75%.
Okay, the 75% on the voting requirement for amending the documents, the $18,000 payment to the city for use for landscaping in the neighborhood, the bench area to be put on the property consistent with the bench that's across the street, and then the 2-week notice to the neighborhood prior to construction.
Including signage.
Including signage posted on the property. Those are the 5 conditions. And the second Commissioner Parnas?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion, second, we have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Morales,
Yes.
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda,
Yes.
Mayor Gantz.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
do
you.
appreciate your time and effort, respect for your time. It speaks well to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we are now on public comment. Persons addressing the commission shall state his or her name and address and may speak for 3 minutes unless extended for 1 additional minute by the mayor. This is the time for public comment for items that are not on tonight's agenda. If you have a public comment on an item on the agenda, the time to do that is after the agenda item is read into the record. And a reminder, no comment shall be made related to the personal life or personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibilities shall be permitted.
I'm so scared. You can speak right to the mic. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, in listening to all of this, that it kind of opens up quite a few problems that we do have in that area, as far as the traffic and, the speeding and the water, the neighborhood and all of that. And I just think we did put in an application to have a speed bump, and we were denied. We were told, oh no, we weren't denied. We were denied. It didn't happen. So I don't know. This whole process is moving, so I just wanted to say that. Maybe we need to have a few more meetings in District 2 so we could, try to iron out a lot of these issues that we have. And that we have in dealing with City Hall and we need things done. Because there's a stop sign that's been down in our neighborhood for well over a month. I called right on the corner of 10th Court and 2nd Avenue, which is Thomasville Park Boulevard and Bethlehem Court. And I called and I put in a request for that to be fixed, and it's not been fixed. And I walk my grandson every morning and I see cars zoom right past where that stop sign is supposed to be. And it's like a stop sign is supposed to be here, one here, and there's no stop signs on the crossway. These cars just turn off the Dixie and zoom right by. And I called, I got the right department, so they told me, they said it was going to be done, and still not. So I don't know why, but there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And then with this coming in, it's like just kind of shed some light on all of that.
Sure. Whenever you have an issue, ma'am, something that, you're very concerned about, call me. I don't know if you have my number or not. You have my number?
I got it from the last District 2 meeting that
Okay, call me. The minute you have an issue, call me and we'll look to resolve those things. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for coming up. But here it is again, this is the case. Anyone else? Yeah. Gwen Clark Reed, you want to go ahead and speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Gwen
Yes,
Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way. Mayor, I want to know if we can get a better signage for the Hillsborough Tech Center. There isn't, the sign that's there, the marker that's there is so far in that people pass that street before they know they're supposed to turn and, and go to the tech center. We need better signage, directionals to the tech center.
Sure, we can definitely look into that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening.
Good evening. I just need you to speak into the microphone, give me your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Gloria Cunningham.
And your address?
Address is 520 Southwest 11th Drive, Deerfield. I had a question I needed to ask. We renamed my father's street on 11th. And it was supposed to be the whole street that I thought, but it only went from, I think it was Second Avenue, the Second Avenue is 1 block. And we got signatures from the whole street, the whole neighborhood, because everyone knew him and knew that he was the longest living person there, and he paid almost half of Broward County and different stuff he did in the community. And I just wanted to know, I had went through Emily Lilly, and she lost her paperwork 2 times, but I had copies sent back to her. But I was just wondering, why did the street go down to Fourth Terrace? I think it's Fourth Terrace.
We can find out, and actually staff had mentioned something to me about that. And I think the way the application was filled out only put those markers to be there. But I would imagine it might be easier to amend if you already have signatures that go on the whole street. So
I have signatures.
I'm sure staff can work with you on that, look into it for you.
I appreciate it.
Sure. No. I don't know what the resolution will be yet, but at least we can look
But
at
at
it.
least
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
out there.
Yes.
And I was said that I could redo another application. But it might make a difference, it might not, but I was willing to do another application just to get it, straight through.
Okay. We can find out for you.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead and close it to the public.
We're now on the consent agreement and expenditure request portion of tonight's agenda, items 9 through 13.
Is there anyone who has any polls between 9 and 13 in the commission?
No.
No? Is there anyone from the public who care to comment on any item 9 through 13? Not seeing anything, I'm gonna go ahead and if someone wants to make a motion, we can do it. I'm gonna close it to the public then, right?
Yes, sir.
And you want to make a motion?
Motion to approve
9 through 13?
9 through 13.
Okay.
Second.
So we have a second by Vice Mayor Hudak, first by Commissioner Parnas. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky.
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda.
Yes.
Mayor Dance.
Yes.
Item number 14 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the purchase of a modular building and related improvements for Fire Station 111 from Advanced Modular Structures, Inc., an amount not to exceed $234,161, authorizing execution of a purchase agreement, providing for implementation and effective date.
Is there anyone in the public here to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close it to the public commission.
Motion to approve.
Second. So we have a motion, a second. Vice Mayor, do you want to speak real quick?
I just wanted to thank this commission for doing, I think we've done more for our firehouses and our police department than previous commissions have done. So I really appreciate keeping, the pedal to the metal to make sure that we improve the working conditions for our first responders. So I'll be approving this.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky.
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda.
Yes.
Mayor Dance.
Yes.
Item number 15 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving a work authorization with Hazen and Sawyer PC, an amount not to exceed $499,170 for the design and engineering services for the West Water Treatment Plant Chemical Improvement Project, authorizing execution of the work authorization and providing for an effective date.
Anyone from the public here to comment on this item? Okay, I'll close it to the public commission.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion is second. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky.
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda.
Yes.
Mayor Dance.
Yes.
Item number 16 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the second 2-year renewal term of the contract with Ashford Inc. for emergency debris removal services, RFP number 2016-1726, providing for a 5% price adjustment in accordance with the contract terms, authorizing execution of the contract renewal, providing for implementation and an effective date.
Commissioner Drosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not have an opportunity to discuss this with staff in advance, so I apologize. But when I was first elected in 2017, that's when we had the hurricane and we had all kinds of pickup issues. And as the mayor will recall, as he roasted Ashford at the podium right in front of us, I just want to ensure that, you know, they have the capacity, you know, should we have a storm event to, and I know this ties into the next item number 17, because I think it's like, this is like the backup. I remember, but neither of them had the capacity in 2017 to meet the city's needs. So I'm just, did we get any assurances that in the event of a storm event that Ashford is staffed to handle the contract we're about to enter into?
Mayor, if I may. So after the experience in 2017, we did have a contract amendment done. As you may recall, although it's been a little bit, where they provided a performance bond in the amount of $2 million. There was clarification about the level of service that they would need to provide and how it would work in terms of if we actually did have a storm event and the time period upon which they would need to show up after that event. So the renewal that's before you, should you approve it tonight, would include, you know, those amendments that were done in 2018. I can't speak to the current staffing. I don't know if Chad has anything on that or the city manager, but I just wanted to point it out. Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to point out that with that amendment, that would be included in this renewal.
I see someone in the back eager to talk too, so.
And actually, we do have a vendor here, so I'd probably allow him to speak towards resource requirements.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Beard, and I'm with Ashford. I'm also a local resident in the Broward County area. But yes, absolutely, since our assurances, like you mentioned, our performance bond, our company has restructured in many ways. Irma was an anomaly, but we rest assured, we absolutely assure you that our capacity has expanded and grown. We're here to serve the community in the event that something does happen. Our office is literally 800 yards away. I'm here to support. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Is that satisfied? Is that a motion?
It is. Motion to approve.
Anyone from the public care to comment on the side? Okay. Closing to the public.
I'll renew the motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion a second. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky,
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda.
Yes.
Mayor Daniels.
Yes.
Item number 17 is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, Florida, approving the second 2-year renewal term of the contract with Tetra Tech Inc. for emergency debris monitoring services, providing for a 5% price adjustment according to the contract terms, authorizing execution of the contract renewal, providing for implementation and an effective date.
Okay. Anyone from the public care to comment on the side? Comments from staff? Commission, close to the public.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion with a second. All in favor, or excuse me, roll call on this, please.
Commissioner Drosky.
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas.
Yes.
Commissioner Preston.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huda.
Yes.
Mayor Daniels.
Yes.
Now, comments by administration and legal. No comments from legal tonight.
I do not have any comments for this evening as well on there.
Thank you. Comments by Service District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. We've had a lot of seaweed on the beach recently, and a lot of that has to do with the eastern winds. Please remember that you cannot remove the seaweed until actually people go out and monitor the turtles. And if residents actually show up before we can remove the seaweed, we can't do that. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware of the process. individuals who monitor hurdles go out first, and then we can go ahead and remove the CV as long as the area is free of residents. So I just wanted to make sure that the residents are aware of that. I want to wish a happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers. That's coming up. We also have the National Day of Prayer, which happens to coincide with Cinco de Mayo. So I'm sure I'm looking forward to that day for those reasons. And on May 14th, we'll have District 1 office hours. So if anybody needs to meet with myself, please reach out to Eric to go ahead and schedule an appointment anytime between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock on that Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. District 2.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers as well. For without you, we would not be here. So we thank you for what you are in our community. I just wanted to advise this commission that there has been an uptick in the testing positive for the COVID-19. And so I think that we should begin to look at precautions. We don't need to implement anything now, but we need to really look at that across the country. There is a slight uptick for the positive, and even some places, death has started coming back. I don't think we should wait until there's some sort of a crisis before we implement a rule. We were very cautious about how we would come to the commission meeting, and I'm just asking the city manager and staff to keep a close eye on that, and let's not wait till we get into some sort of a crisis before we make a decision. That's it for me there.
Thank you. District 3.
We had a very interesting District 3 meeting with FDOT about the superhighway they want to build through Deerfield. And in the discussion, the project manager told me and the audience that $800 and some odd million is going to be spent. And I asked, how much time will it save the people of Parkland who now get off at Power Line and go to 95 with this $850 million saved them? You know what the answer was? 5 minutes. $850 million for 5 minutes. They want to know why I'm against it. I would love to see that kind of money go into public transportation so that we don't have to build more roads and go bumper to bumper around 95. If we had good public transportation, it would be a reason to leave your car home. But we don't. So we have no alternative but to get on the roads and chug along. Every major city that I've ever been to has good public transportation. Chicago, LA, San Francisco, New York, Boston. But not here. Not here. I was flabbergasted when the project manager said 5 minutes. That's all it's going to say. 5 minutes. And they want to know why I'm against the project. It'll come right by on 10th Street. The people that live on the south and the businesses that'll be affected, and Century Village on the north, which has in season 16,000 residents. And they gave them a choice. You can either live with the noise.
Commissioner,
Yes.
on this particular subject matter, I think you've kind of sailed the ship on this one.
Maybe.
And you're talking to a crowd of 5. So I'm just
Well, okay. Well, I'll just make this one last point. And I may lose my train.
I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to.
It just upsets me that they gave, I got the point now. They gave the people of Century Village and the people to the south a choice. A 22-foot wall, so everybody up into the first and second floor can't see anything but a wall and feel like they're in prison, or not have a wall and have noise. And so I asked the simple question, you build a 22-foot wall, how much quieter would it be? You know what their answer was? 5 decibels. That's the choice that residents have. 22-foot wall or live with the noise. And if they have the wall, it's 5 decibels. That's all I have from District 3.
Thank you. District 4.
Thank you, Mayor. There will be a time and place to hash out the details of Southwest 10th Street, but, you know, for me, tonight's not that night. We will duke it out with FDOT, but I'm not prepared to do that tonight. I don't have any further comments, except I likewise want to join my colleague in wishing everyone a happy Mother's Day this Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers as well. Final comments. Thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, it's okay, so.